My name is Simon Ortiz. I'm from New Mexico originally, but I am a professor at the ASU, or Arizona State University in Tempe. And I'm a Native American from Acoma Pueblo in New Mexico, the Acoma Pueblo, which is west of Albuquerque. Well, I'm here currently because I was invited by a graduate student. Her name is Amy Ullman, and she works over at West High School. And she is also a graduate student working on her, I guess, a PhD under Professor Linda Bolton. And so they thought about me because I wrote a book called From Sand Creek, which is one of my poetry collections. I'm a poet who used to be in Iowa City many years ago, 43 years ago. I know because my son is 43, and he was born in October of 1968. So my history with Iowa City is that it goes back to 1968. I think the most common question, because I am Native or Indigenous American, I prefer to use the word Indigenous. Indian is so bogged down with the history of colonization that sometimes Indian is a stereotypical. Indigenous is much more neutral, you know. Not that it is defined or limited, but it's more neutral in the sense that history is not so much a baggage, you know, negative history especially. When you consider the United States and oftentimes the dispossession of Native people, then I acknowledge myself and have to, define what an Indigenous person is. So oftentimes the most common question is, do you write as a Native American or as an Indian or Indigenous person? You know, so that's a common question. And of course my reply is that I don't necessarily only write as a Native American person or Indigenous person. I write because I think poetry is very much a human voice, a human voice in general. Obviously there's going to be occasions when a person such as me is going to speak from within himself, and within myself is a Native American person. So I think that it's important that I not be denied, you know, my Indigenous heritage voice. You know, although of course I speak in the English language so that people can understand. You know, obviously my inner thoughts and the inner language is my original or native language voice, which is Keres, or of the Acoma Pueblo people in New Mexico, which obviously is a part of my voice in a very natural, ever-present self. I think that now I don't really have a quiet place. I live by myself since I'm not married, and I have a place, a home in Tempe, Arizona, you know, and so I guess you could say it's a quiet place, but it's not necessarily a place in which I shut out the world, you know, because everything and every day and every moment is a place where an artist is. And so since a person is engaged with his normal everyday activities, you know, that's actually the place that I have, you know. And so I know that there's something called the Ivory Tower, but that's more or less a metaphorical place where ideally people might want, but there's no such place really, you know, because every day is an engaged moment for me, and everywhere. I'm involved with Iowa City right now because I was invited to visit West High School, and tonight I'm doing a reading, you know, at the library in concert with, you know, visiting Amy Ullman's class, you know, that I did at West High School. So the quiet place is non-existent, but the place of that expressive, creative nature of me being a human person engaged with others, such as you, such as students I was with a couple hours ago, that's the place in which I work. I think everybody does. Sometimes it's respite from, say, work. I mean, I have daily during the semester. I teach, of course, graduate students and upper division undergraduate students. So you want to get away from it and maybe get a breath or. Maybe just even relaxation and recreation, and it's an escape in a sense. But it's also, I think, another moment in your life in which you afford yourself time with yourself, time for yourself when you're not engaged but with anything else except yourself. Except I'm a person that believes that no moment is simply one's own, in a maybe self-centered way. I think that the real person and the real people is when you are involved with others, and that is you're a human being. I'll say it in the Native American language, that is my first language. That is the reason that we are a human people, that we are a people who are communal, who are engaged socially. So when you are involved with other things or engaged with other things, you are actually living the life that you're supposed to have. A social person, not a individual or not a certainly isolated, singular self. My concerns, I think, for the human, social, cultural, historical, political life or dynamic, experience, to me is very important, partly because culturally, growing up, there was always that kind of maybe not expectation, but part of your cultural belief system was to be helpful to others. In other words, sometimes, for example, the social conflicts that are socio-political conflicts sometimes involve one personally, but actually it's a responsibility that we all have. So I kind of am engaged, if at all, if I'm an activist, it's always on behalf of trying to help others, trying to bring attention to matters in which I may be helpful, whether it's has to do with discrimination or racism or intolerance, to try to be to try to have a approach as a professor or a teacher, to have people understand. I guess you could say even having a positive critical belief system. Ask questions, and be helpful with, even if it's heavy-duty physical work or heavy-duty intellectual work. To me, it's more or less the same thing. I think that, one of the things that I'm doing right now is working on a project with a colleague who is from a University of California at Irvine. And we're working on a book that has to do with memory. It's not memoir, but it's how memory of our past lives, childhood, are still a part of our present experience. Like memory of childhood doesn't go away. We keep it somehow, but and it becomes part of our habit, our life patterns. And so whether it's Me as a Native American who haven't been born in 1941, or Professor Gabriela Schwab, who's my co-writer on this book, Children of Fire, Children of Water. Whether it's her life, she was born right after World War II in Germany, southern Germany, whether it's her writing about her German cultural, political, social heritage or background, and me writing as a Native American coming from a reservation community life in New Mexico, and the history, social and political and cultural of ourselves, engaged in a kind of it's a dialogue. It's a dialogue. It's not a point counterpoint argument or dialogue, but actually writing from and expressing ourselves from our particular backgrounds, and that of course can go through the whole gamut of, say, trauma, political, social, historical trauma from our specific cultural backgrounds. And so I would say that to include this as part of my outlook on life, presently, I think it has been very much a learning process for me. I'm looking forward to, we're trying to finish it within this year or next. We've been working on it for 7 years. It's gotten quite along. There's been a couple of things have been published from it, and we hope to get it done. Art is a spiritual experience, I believe. Spiritual in the sense that we are looking not only within ourselves, but within the life that is around us. It's a kind of aesthetic or a philosophy that I think demands that you be honest, that you be honest about yourself as a human being and its relationship to other things around you, and to look within ourselves. And I think religion is a look within ourselves, and to question, if necessary, your belief system, And in that kind of spirituality, I think it's not necessarily only, say, religious services in church or in the Bible or in the Native American ritual or ceremonies, but it's how we approach one's daily life, moment by moment, instant by instant, to be conscious of that insight, I guess, and the dimension of life that we live, as completely as we can. That's the kind of spirituality that I feel that I participate in. Everyone is a writer. We don't necessarily represent what we express in words, that is on a printed page or using a computer or whatever, digital. Or I think most of our work as writers are scripted. I think that everybody's really a poet. That's my at really the bottom of language use. I think it's a dynamic of poetry that is almost what do you call it? Maybe it is ineffable. You are within that moment of language at its very creation, and how that creation affects us when it becomes poetry.